Harold, welcome back to Face. Always look forward to talking to you. I've asked you to unmute. I'll share my screen.
Yeah, I've got you on mute.
Okay, there you go. Hi, Harold.
Good to talk to you.
Yeah, good to talk to you. So, there's so much going on since you and I last talked, and one of my major takeaways was if the Biden administration was to get anything through Congress, which seems to have hit some type of brick wall, they had until August, because then we're into the election cycle, or they had till the end of July because Congress goes on recess. What kind of grade would you give the first 6 months or so of the Biden administration? What are they doing well, and where are they misstepping?
That's a big question, but it's really important. I listened to the last half hour of your uh,
Our analysis?
interplay discussion. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I thought, you're missing one thing, and that is the political background and how it will shape stimulus in the U.S., but also how it will shape the Fed policy. So let me just
Okay.
answer your question, but let me first say Powell's term runs out at the end of this year, early next year, and normally his if he's staying or there is a successor, it would be decided roughly November. So if I'm sitting there as Powell and I want to stay, in no way am I going to taper or do anything contractionary. If I do it, the odds are it's going to cause turmoil, and I'm out. So so
Okay. So
that's
he has an axe to grind. Do you think he wants to stay on? And do you think Biden will renominate him again? Keep him on?
uh, Wall Street loves him. I think Yellen wants to replace him. That's my insider's assessment. After I'm still around in the background.
Okay, because he's
Yellen,
been playing ball with Yellen. I mean,
yep,
they
yep.
have a relationship, so that surprises me a little bit. But
Well, it's
um,
just my judgment. She would like somebody who's more.
like
Um,
Arthur Burns
I think she's thinking of someone who would be a kind of sister, you know,
would be a
like
what?
a sister, someone who will work with her within the
Oh,
family.
okay.
So, so that's the main background. Now, how has the Biden administration fared? Um,
Do you have
the
any people in mind that you might pick, Harold? Do you want to put a name out there or no?
Yeah, well, the vice chairman, what's her name? I'm sorry, I'm tip of my tongue.
I
Um,
forgot her name too.
yeah, well, she's
All right.
forgettable, except that she's a favorite of Yellen.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's an interesting headline anyway. That Yellen may want to replace Powell.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
Now,
now we're talking about Biden.
now, your this point is correct that they had to get something done before September, which meant really you have to get it done in July, where we are now, because August Congress goes away and they don't come back till they don't really work until second week of September. And by then, it's not much time before the Christmas holidays. So the working time is really slim. Um, and now they're tied up in knots over infrastructure right now, but they can't seem to get votes for anything else. So let me explain. Number one, they have a tax bill, but I believe that it's impossible to get any change at all in tax law until sometime next year, but probably not even then.
Okay.
So don't expect any big change um, in the climate for your investments. I just don't see the votes.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah, they could
stimulus,
barely keep their own caucus together.
that's right. They will divide.
With Manson, he's he's kind of like the fly in the ointment for the Democrats to have a majority, right?
Well, I think what he's doing is he's trying to help Biden by sidelining the progressives. He's trying to
Okay.
say, the progressives can't pass anything therefore won't pass. So let me just put a marker down here. Stay inside and forget the progressives. So it helps Biden somewhat, even though it looks like it's trouble for him.
Okay.
Typical Senate maneuver of old Senate hands. Now, regarding an additional stimulus, I'd say the odds are zero. Um,
Okay.
Anytime, it's just not going to happen
Okay,
unless,
so that's his second. Isn't that what he wanted to? The Democratic Party wanted to run parallel with the compromise infrastructure bill that really is about roads and bridges, et cetera. And the other part is human infrastructure. Is that
yeah,
what you're calling stimulus?
the human interest, the human part,
Yeah,
whether it's assistance to working mothers so
yeah.
they can go back to work, all that stuff, it's not going to pass.
I thought
Uh,
they already passed something where they're going to get childcare, 300 per child.
yeah, yeah,
That has not passed.
no, that passed in the previous
Okay,
stimulus. That's
all
in
right.
motion, but that's
Okay,
about it. But we're
okay,
not going to get anything new. So
okay.
I know this sounds bleak, but here's what I think you keep a point focus. There is discussion in both parties. Is there any way the voting outlook can change? And the answer is yes. If there is a major negative correction in the stock market, that will scare a lot of Republicans into working with the Biden team. So, in the background, uh, unhappily, there is a lot of talk. Is there a way to engineer a downward correction in the stock market sometime between now and the end of the year? Because that is the only way we're going to get votes for any expansion.
Well, what do
Um,
you think? I mean, I look how effective, at least for a day, just jawboning, Powell's jawboning about yes, eventually we're going to taper. It took about $100 out of gold and silver,
right?
and the
Yep.
S&P sold off pretty good. Although then he came back out and softened his speech a little bit, and we have the Fed minutes today. Could
Right.
the Fed minutes be part of it? It should be easy to engineer. The market would not like a taper. It definitely
Uh,
would not like higher rates.
okay.
But just a
Well,
taper could do it, right?
well, here's what I see. Will will Powell cooperate with Yellen and let a negative correction bloom, or will he, be cautious? Uh,
Yeah.
the Treasury is probably going to somewhere along in here paint a bleak picture. Now, how is the economy faring as we talk? As I watched your comments about the 10-year yield, and you put, as I do, a further downward move to about 120. And I thought, yeah, that's about right. Um, I think we have more to go downward on the 10s and 30s.
Okay, we're at
And
131 now. It's actually coming off again today. So
yeah,
we're 10 bips away, 10 bips away from where my
yeah,
target.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this is frankly my assessment of the last week or two that we were now on the edge. And now we look at the economy, um, we have mixed signals, it's true. But the reality is the housing boom appears to be over. Not that it's peaking, but it did peak. The high end is showing pain. the high-end home builders say that the market's drying up. The lumber index is falling rapidly. Um, it's I think the when we look at ISM and PMI, we see good numbers, except that the numbers for employment and capital spending are terrible. Um, I think the economy is now turning. What we're seeing is demand is not sufficient without more stimulus, and we're going to slow down markedly in the second half. Now, all of that is background to what we think about um, how this political turmoil will be resolved. Now, is the Biden team really good at this or not? I have to give them a C plus, um, because
Okay.
they're tangled up with a bunch of progressives who want to do something that can't be done. They simply can't get the votes, but they keep dividing among themselves. And Biden knows how to do this. He has experience, but he can't control the party. And Nancy Pelosi in the House, she's trying to keep her power, but that means she has to take care of the progressives. So it's not getting anywhere. They're caught in a mire. Um, so all of this is backdrop now. Um, so when you start looking at currencies and commodities, well, I don't want to touch on commodities. You have the best possible person tomorrow. Um,
Oh,
uh,
we already had Tracy yesterday.
but yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
see. I didn't see. I thought you
All
had
right.
her
Well,
tomorrow.
yeah. So it's on video if you want to watch it. But
Oh, I
she was
will
here
do.
yesterday.
But she's great. So everybody
Yeah.
should watch. She's about as good as it gets. Um, and so so the backdrop is um, the economy is, in my judgment, sagging, and then we're at this questionable period of, are we going to have an engineered negative correction, or are we going to stay where we are? I don't think we can stay where we are, as the weakness shows. So then, how is it controlled? Does Powell want to stay? He'll cooperate in whatever is necessary. Um, but I don't think we should expect any sign of tightening or hinting or tapering. Um, it's just not the right moment, unless Yellen says, explicitly, if she's not going to say if you want to stay, but basically it'll be that message. This is what I want.
So
Um,
could they do that by coming out with these kind of jawbone statements about stock prices are
Elevated.
irrational,
Yeah,
exuberance, or
yeah.
frothy, and
Somewhere in there, I would not be surprised. That would,
okay,
yeah,
all right, and I don't know what you're thinking, Harold, but I know you have a bottoming target around 120. But when I look at yields here, to me, what the yield's coming down from over 170 towards 120 is just a correction from the yield move from 50 bips to 170.
right.
And to me, this is just correcting this first big advance that we had in
Yes,
yields. And there's another wave after this decline to the upside above 2%. So, and you know what? The Fed didn't tighten, and look what still happened. So, what was this? Who drove rates from here to here if it
yeah,
wasn't the Fed? Bond vigilantes?
yeah. Well, look, this is all about the blame game. Who's going to get blamed?
Okay.
And the Fed wants to resist blame. So that's probably the driving force at the moment. They don't want to be blamed for anything um, that even slightly favors a big change in the board.
Because they're already unpopular.
Yeah,
Oh,
popular in Wall Street, not popular in the Treasury.
okay. All right. So Yellen really pulling the strings for what's going to happen in the Fed, and that's when in the fall, November. You said again,
Yeah,
Harold. November.
Yes,
All right. Can we switch gears? I know you have a lot of experience on the defense side of things.
yes.
Okay. So I want to ask you, Biden had his big summit with Putin, and less than 3 weeks later, there's another big hack. I don't know if Biden gave him a wink and a nod that it's okay to hack the Republicans since you hacked us already. But, you know, uh, it seems like there's going to have to be some type of retaliation. And I've read that we're just not really strong enough in this area that if we retaliate, that then the next action we may not be able to handle. What do you think Biden will do or won't do when it comes to Russia right now?
Yeah, his foreign policy team uh, is capable, but um, not at the level of experience that I think they ought to be. I mean, they should not have met with Putin in the first place. So because it opened,
Gave him
uh,
legitimacy?
it gave
Yeah.
him legitimacy. And then
Okay.
they favored him with this dropping the Nord Stream 2 sanction, which gave him more legitimacy. But they didn't get
Okay.
much back. Um, Now,
No, this is
retaliation,
what they got back, and this was not the criminal syndicate. This was the military service going
yeah, the
into it.
GRU, their
Yeah.
military squad.
Right. Right.
Um, I think, well, I've been asked by a lot of different people, how would you get back? And I said, you don't do it in the same way. What you do is target Putin's personal power base. Um, he basically is supported by a dozen or two oligarchs, and he gets money out of the flow of all their businesses.
Mainly
Um,
oil.
Not only oil and gas. I mean, every major company
Okay.
in Russia is subservient to Putin and his own bank. Um, and and you can go after the bank accounts. A lot of the oligarchs, for example, have money outside Russia. I mean, there's long tradition of making money under the Soviet Union and putting a large part of it outside where it was unreachable.
Are they
Um,
using Cyprus like they did? I mean, they got
yes,
banged
yes.
pretty good moving in Cyprus when they had that bail in.
Yeah, that still works. Cyprus is still a major float. It's
Okay.
been a long time. I'm really familiar with Cyprus. It's decades long. Um, and that flow is directed by Alpha Bank. Deutsche
Hmm.
Bank is very much involved with that Cyprus Bank channel. The Russian money flows through places where we can see it, and so you're going to get at Putin. You have to get at his power structure because if you nail his supporters, they they have pressure capability on Putin. But
Yeah.
if you try to do it,
Instead of like I heard someone say that they were considering turning out the lights in Russia, and that's not going to build any popular sentiment for the
yeah,
U.S. with the whole population if we take down their grid.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. You don't want to make the people unhappy. Yes,
right. So
getting the
just
Russian.
just take away his financial power.
That's right.
Okay.
That, that,
And with China, you see any developments with what do you think about the way that um, Biden's interacting with China? I heard that the administration said that Taiwan is no longer a problem or a complication for the U.S., it's an opportunity. What do they mean by that?
yeah, they don't know what they mean. They are playing this day to day because China is upset increasingly um, by talk of among Australia, Japan, and the U.S. talk of defending Taiwan. And then the Japanese came out and said, well, we'll participate in the defense of Taiwan. So everything is heightened tension. Um, and I don't know if I really agree with how they're handling this. They're trying to use soft words mixed with hard words. And it's very confusing. I think it's day to day. But if you boil this down, China is not in a position to have a full scale war with Taiwan without losing a lot of lives of the military. And you remember that when Russia was in this battle in Chechnya, it finally came to an end because so many Russian soldiers were killed that the mothers of Russia, basically turned on central government, said that's it, no more. I think China even more so. It's a culture built around families, and most of these families, if they have a son, that's their only child. They're not going to
That's
want
right.
the boys to be killed.
Right.
So they're not going to go into kinetic warfare. They may try to harass Taiwan, but um, but the damage to the regime, if they actually went to war and lost a generation or two of young men, I think Xi Jinping would not survive that.
Okay. All right.
So
All
yeah,
right. Because uh, what's happening in China with their currency is that China has done a few things. They're trying to push commodity prices down,
yes,
and they want the yuan to depreciate in value. That it's been a little bit too much. What do you think China does when it comes to currency? They're talking about going with a digital yuan. Is this Cold War really just an economic Cold War between us and China?
for now, yes, but it's a really hard war because Xi Jinping is really upset about what he calls the American blocking of China's technology progress, and
I
he's
see.
making
Is
that.
that why they did the? I mean, there's all kinds of things happening to Chinese stocks, and there was
Yeah,
one that was cut in half, and they're really going after their big corporations that are domestic companies or Chinese companies. Why are they
yes.
doing that?
Basically, number one, the Chinese economy is not growing as fast as it looks. They measure their growth by output, but demand is really, really weak. And if we look at consumption at the ordinary working folk level, it's extremely weak because there's been no rise uh, in incomes from the majority of people for the last several years. They have to find some way of shaking up the internal economy, and but they don't haven't quite found a way to do it yet. It's but we should. They are not. They're growing really at about 2% rate, not 6, 7, 8%. But it's just we are mesmerized by these output numbers. Um, so they're in a crisis internally, and I think Xi Jinping is struggling to maintain power because his power, to some extent, depends not only on the party apparatus, but on the wealthiest Chinese families. Um, that we overlook this, but they have their oligarchs also. The concentration of the economy in China is like Russia is increasingly like the U.S. Highly concentrated um, enterprises dominating everything. And so the leadership is struggling with this inequality, slow growth, unhappiness, and then food. Food is a nightmare because
Oh yeah, yeah.
uh,
It could be a nightmare here, Harold. If you look at grain prices,
I
they've
expect yeah,
yeah. Go
I
ahead.
expect a nightmare here too. I think the inflation that we're having is going to die down except for food. The food's going to be a nightmare going ahead.
And water.
We really have to, Biden people are not thinking about these things. They keep talking about green economy, but they're not focused on the reality. We have a water problem that's fast developing on the western side of the U.S.
Yeah.
That was foreseeable. But we have a big water problem in the central U.S. where the water
Drought.
table is slowly,
Yeah.
drought is coming unless we rethink how we distribute water. And I don't see anyone in the administration thinking ahead. I've been thinking about this some years about how to move water from the Arctic through Canada to the U.S. because there's a lot of water if we just move it.
Yeah, it's melting anyway.
Yeah. So,
all right. Yeah. Well, why don't you
uh,
call Joe today so that we have some water to drink here in California and Arizona and the whole West and how about not using corn for ethanol anymore instead of feed people with the corn instead of making fuel out of it. That's the most.
well, I'm with you, but I don't see anyone around Biden who has that kind of mind that you have or thinks the
Well,
way.
maybe I should run.
Why not? Yeah, but
Okay.
you wouldn't
I have
want
too
to.
many skeletons in my closet.
Yeah, I've been around this for too long. And by the way, this brings me to a point you didn't mention, but that's about all this Bitcoin controversy. We
Okay.
have a minute.
Yeah.
I'm not. I have never taken sides on whether cryptocurrency is a good thing or a bad thing. I've simply been observing how central banks and governments look at it, and predictably, they are getting increasingly
Nervous.
intolerant.
Yeah.
And yeah, not just nervous. I think they're
Yeah.
now at the point, how do we get a grip on it, control it, or just stamp it out? It varies among. So we're going to see increasing effort by all governments, with the U.S. Right in front, of making it extremely expensive, making it extremely taxable, more taxable than it should be, and eventually making it impossible to function in a market sense. I think I just don't think that cryptocurrencies have much future because they won't allow it to be.
Right.
The,
So the rest of the world's going to go the way of China banning it.
yeah, but China's doing it slowly because they can't quite. China is an economy where there's a lot visible, but a lot happens that's not visible. So their problem of putting everything under a digital system, it would be much harder than it is in the U.S.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, Harold, it's always eye-opening and to get some thoughts about what's happening in our Meshuggah world that we have going on here today. If you need a translation, let me know. It means crazy in Yiddish, but really appreciate your time and you spending it with us. And really, some interesting things were brought up about possibly engineering stock market decline that would get the Republicans on board, because I remember TARP when it was voted
Yep.
down and then the market tanked. And yeah, there's nothing like people's 401ks melting to get senators and congressmen into action. So thank you very much, Harold, for showing up
Okay.
and being with us again today. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Good. Me too.
All right,
I hope
buddy.
it'll be better
All
times.
right.
Yep.
Everyone, everyone, Harold Malmgren, and you could go to his website and read about him and their research. And if you like what Harold had to say, and there's, a very interesting and experience and wisdom comes with time. It only comes with the passing of time. And Harold's got an abundance of it. So thanks again, Harold, for being with us today. Adios.
Adios.
Adios. Adios, my friend. See you guys tomorrow. Remember, don't just count your pips, count your blessings, and see you tomorrow.